Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sarah Newman, and I'm so happy you're joining me for this episode of Saturday with Sara. This week, I'm excited to show you the beautiful Dewdrops collection from our friends at Stamperia. We have a classic Stamperia money saver for you today with pattern papers, 2 coordinating sets of rub-ons, plus a pack of chipboard laser die cuts. So let's take a closer look. We can start with our paper pack. Now this contains 10 double-sided pattern papers, gorgeous faux textures, plus of course some images here for you to cut out. You've got birds and florals. You'll also have sheets with this really gorgeous faux texture on them. I think the color palette, this really pretty soft pastel pink and blue, is just a gorgeous combination for cards and paper crafts of all different themes. So as you can see, lots of nice border elements on here as well. Some fun corner treatments too. Just gorgeous. Then of course we also have some cutout elements. So these are double-sided. Here's one side of these cutout tags. And then on the other side you can see you have a bit more room for personalization. Same thing with this sheet of the words and the tickets. Then you've got one side which is illustrated and one side with a little bit more space. And then on the inside of our back cover, we've got even more cutout elements here for you to play with. So that's our pattern paper pack. Then to go along, we have 2 sets of rub-ons that coordinate. So we have the bird rub-ons and the floral rub-ons. So take a look, really stunning designs. Lots of nice elements that you can use as focals, and then also some background and accent pieces there too. Now Stamperia always includes instructions on how to do the rub-on transferring, and of course I will demonstrate that for you too. Then finally, we also have that pack of laser chipboard die cuts, and I've put them onto 2 sheets of cardstock so you can see the different images. And of course, lots of large images, perfect for card focals. And then you've also got some smaller accent pieces here and some words and sentiments to go along. So as you can see, we have an absolutely gorgeous collection to play with today. There's a lot in here that we can use to create gorgeous, unique handmade cards. I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm so excited to explore the creative possibilities with you. So come play with us. Let's start with our first card, which uses the pattern papers, rub-ons, the chipboard, and a cutout from the paper pack. Now I'm also using the Meadow Blooms die set from Hot Off the Press to add some additional foliage around the focal element. And we'll talk a little bit more about that die set too. But for now we can start with our focal, which is one of the cutouts from the paper pack. So you might remember this sheet here, again double-sided, so we've got some more pattern on the other side. And this is the one that I used right here. So I've just trimmed that out with my scissors, and then I can add my rub-on to this. So this is the rub-on that I used. I think this is absolutely stunning and would work beautifully as a background element, but I wanted it to be a little bit more toward the center and then have this gorgeous bird overlapping. Now, as I mentioned, these are really easy to apply. All you're going to need to have is a bone folder, and that's going to be the tool to use. So I've trimmed this out from the main sheet. So here it is, keeping those 2 sheets together. I've simply trimmed that out with my scissors, and then what I'm going to do is just pull off that liner. And holding this pretty carefully, I don't want to touch the image itself on the back there. So I'm hanging on to a non-printed portion of that plastic piece. Then I'm just going to position this in place. Now I like to kind of fold up a little corner of that plastic piece to give me something to hang on to and to pull off when I get ready to lift this sheet off. So I'm first going to burnish this with my finger. There's a little bit of stick to the back of this, which is nice. It means it won't go sliding around. But now I just need to take my bone folder and burnish that in place. So firm, even pressure on all of those areas, and especially around the outside. When you have something really detailed, you want to make sure to get all of those little extra flourishes, the tiny leaves, and make sure that everything is really well transferred. Okay, we'll see how I did there. I'm going to lift this up, and I can see already I didn't get that little detail part there. So I can simply come back and burnish it again. But let's walk this around and we can see. There we go. It looks like I've got all of that transferred on. Absolutely stunning. So you can, of course, do your rub-ons on a plain white or plain solid colored cardstock, but don't forget you can also incorporate them into lightly patterned backgrounds like this here. So once I have this piece all rubbed on and ready to go, I've inked around the outside edges using the Delicata Gold ink pad, and that just gives a nice little bit of shading on here. And just underneath my cutout, I have a couple of accents. Now first is this branch that's tucked under here, and this is one of the cutouts too. This is from the paper pack, and it's this branch right up here. Not too hard to cut out with a pair of scissors, so I've got that. And then I also have 3 pieces of foliage here, and as I mentioned, these come from the Meadow Bloom set. I love these foliage pieces, and I think they make a really nice accent with or without the flowers that come on the set. So you've got 3 flowers on here too. And I have to say, this is one of those die sets that I think of as being small but mighty, because you can get a lot of different looks from these images. You can cut the pieces as silhouettes, as I've done here, or you can color them. You can build them up with different colored cardstock like we've done on the back. Of course, there's always a project idea on the back of the packaging, and I think it's just a classic set. And for under $10, it's a pretty good bargain too. So I've got my 3 pieces here tucked underneath. Now I glued the ends of the branch and the foliage to the back of my cutout, and then I foam taped the cutout to the card front. And that means that I'm able to leave some of the ends here slightly loose for a little bit more dimension. Of course, you can glue those down, especially if you're sending this through the mail and you don't want those to be popping up like so. Then I've added this really sweet bird image and the Take the Chance sentiment. Those are both chipboard pieces there too. Then for the background, I've trimmed down this sheet of pattern paper. I think this is absolutely gorgeous. I've just cut that down slightly smaller than the front of my card, and I inked around the outside edges with the gold ink pad. Now this sheet has lots of beautiful foliage already printed on it, and I've used that for my side area over here. But I also wanted to add in a little bit more. So I've used this rub-on here in the corner of the rub-on sheet to accent the corner of this piece of pattern paper. And that's all secured onto the front of my card. And then for my card inside, I've got some cardstock just lining the inside here. And this is from the Tulip Parade cardstock set. And that's what I've used throughout today's webisode. You can see they've got a lot of really nice greens and blues in here, and it just worked perfectly for the pattern paper in today's webisode. And I also used those to cut my foliage pieces here on the front. And I wanted to point this out to you as well, because this foliage rub-on will look different, of course, applied onto a dark brown cardstock as opposed to, for example, a white or a lighter patterned paper. So you can really get some very different looks whether you're applying your rub-ons to a dark cardstock or to something a bit lighter. So keep that in mind as you're deciding where and when to use those. Then I've got another cutout here which has that beautiful bird and the printed message on here as well to finish off the inside of my card. Our next card has a window opening, and this is really easy to make with a square die. and it gives you the option to have another layer of texture with the pattern papers and the rub-on images. So let's talk about how to do this. First, I've covered my card front with the tan cardstock from the Tulip Parade cardstock pack, and then I added my patterned paper on top. Now, you might want to kind of play around with the various papers here and see which portion of the collage background will be visible around the outside edges of that square window, so you can position things where you want them to go. Then for gluing down the paper, I really recommend applying stick glue all over the back of each paper to make sure it lays in place. And then make sure the glue has time to dry before doing your die cutting. So that's very important. So let me bring in this card, and you'll have to pretend that it's been covered with two pieces of cardstock, and then you'll simply place your square die on top. So the square dies that I'm working with are the 10 square and scalloped cutting dies from Hot Off the Press. This is one that I use all the time, and I love it because you've got the straight edge squares in here, and then of course you've got the scalloped squares to go along there too. So after you cover your cardstock with your paper, you'll put the die, the square die, down in place and secure it with some low tack tape. And this is the tape that I use, which is from Hunky Dory. And you'll notice that I've positioned my tape more toward the inside of this die than the outside. And that's because when you run this through your die cutting machine, it exerts, of course, a lot of pressure, and you don't want that tape to stick to the pattern paper around the outside edge. And then you will run this through your die cutting machine. Very important, open the card first and then run it through so that you don't accidentally go through multiple layers. Now you may need to pass it through a couple of times because you're cutting through 3 layers of cardstock. But eventually you'll have a window card design like this. Now you can, of course, leave this as is if you want to and then decorate around it. You can also add a scalloped frame like I've got here. And to do this, of course, you need the larger scalloped square. I'm going to pop this out, pull this tape off. I tend to reuse that tape. You can save it and use it again and again. And then what you'll do is simply take the 2 of these together. Let's take this, secure them down onto another piece of cardstock. And of course I'm using the cardstock from the Tulip Parade. So secure those down in place like so. Run it through your die cutting machine. And then you will have a piece that looks like this. And so from here, you can simply glue this around the outside edge of your window. Then let me grab another piece of paper here and you can see the contrast there. So simply glue that in place and you are ready to go. You've got a really nice decorated window, which I think is a lot of fun. So here I've kept things really nice and tone on tone with the brown cardstock kind of blending into the rest of that beautifully, subtly patterned paper. And then for the front here, I've added 2 laser chipboard flowers in the bottom corner. So that's this large piece here and then a smaller one. So those are overlapping a bit, and that's down here. And then up at the top, I've got this really pretty kind of cluster of flowers and the pine cones. And that's going right like so. I've also got some rub-ons just tucked in behind that large flower cluster here, just to add another little bit of dimension as well. And then I've got the Remember chipboard sentiment at the bottom. And then for the inside of my card, I've got this really nice light faux wood patterned paper. And I've added this image from the Bird Rub-On set. So you can have a look here. It's this one right there. And I thought that just looked really beautiful. It looks gorgeous on its own, but I think it makes a really nice background to the larger flowers here, but then when you open this, it looks beautiful on its own as well. And I've got another one of the chipboard elements, which I've positioned so that it can't be seen through the window. So you do want to do a little bit of playing around with the positioning before you glue everything down to make sure what is coming through the window is exactly what you want to show. But it's a really fun technique and a great way to incorporate lots of different layers into your cards. The chipboard elements and the cutouts can also be layered to create an eye-catching focal. So here I have a really simple card layout with a collage of elements right in the center, taking advantage of that beautiful background paper. So let's have a look here. Now, as an Oregonian, this background paper really appeals to me, and I just love the idea of this woman with her camera outside exploring. So I've trimmed down the pattern paper slightly smaller than the front of the card, and I inked around the outside edges with the Delicata Gold ink pad. And then from there, I've built up my collage. So the woman is the focal and the largest part of the collage, with these other elements layered behind and in front. So the trick here is to overlap the elements and vary the sizes and shapes and angles. So I've got this blue skies cutout, which I tore around the edges that I knew would show from underneath here. And I liked using that kind of jagged edge of the printed piece as an inspiration for that. And then I inked around the outside edges there with the gold ink pad to create a little bit of dimension around those outside edges and to make it stand out from the background paper. And this is down at a slight angle, as you can see. And then we have our young woman, and on top at an opposite angle, we have our pine cone. And then we've also got the word Wonderland. So as you can see, I've got elements of different sizes and shapes. I've got the oval of the pine cone, the rectangle of the word, and the jagged edge of the cutout. All of this for variety, and everything is overlapping to stand as one unit. Then here, I wanted to have something at the top corner of the card. And so I added this pine bow rub-on. Now this is from the floral rub-on set. Lots of beautiful elements to use in here. I just think this is gorgeous. So it's this one down here at the bottom. And then I accented the card with the thin line pearl and pastel dazzles. You can see them going this way and also down at the bottom. These are really useful. This is the gold sheet that I used. You can see they are very, very thin. And they just add a really beautiful effect to your cards. If you want something subtle, but also will pick up the shine in here. And they come in a variety of different patterns, all of them quite narrow, as you can see. We also have them in not just the gold, but also a variety of different colors and finishes. So a really useful set to have on hand if you like to add something, just a little something to your cards. So I've got this going along here. It is interrupted by the rub-on, so I've positioned one dazzle going this way and then trimmed off a smaller piece and had it going up around the top of that beautiful pine bow. Then I've got another one going across the bottom. Then for my card inside, I have a strip of pattern paper along with another floral rub-on applied right down here and more of the thin line dazzles, plus the camera element and the word nature. And I also find these little accent bubbles, I guess they're bubbles, rub-ons. These are a lot of fun. So I have a couple kind of top and bottom here around the camera just to accent that and add an extra touch to the inside of the card. Our final card project also has a beautiful collage of chipboard elements and another positive message, which I really love. Now we also have an interesting card base, and this is made with the Trifold Surprise card die, and it will give you a card base that looks like this, which is a lot of fun to decorate, especially when you have a collection of coordinating and larger size chipboard pieces like we have today. so let's have a look at the die that I'm working with today. So as you can see, just one large metal piece here, and this is all you need to have to give you not only the cut lines, but also the score lines in here too. So then when I flip this over, you can see where they will give you the mountain folds and the valley folds indicated on the diagram, and your instructions as well. And then of course, this is where you can store your die inside the storage folder. So everything stays together really nicely, which I appreciate. So here I've got a piece that I've die cut from just plain cardstock, and you can see that you'll have this kind of inner slit here. All you need to do is follow the folding diagrams, your mountain folds and your valley folds, so this will all come together like so. Now I do recommend keeping that bone folder on hand, the same one that you used to apply your rub-ons, and that will help give you some nice crisp edges on here. So there you go. As you can see, it's super simple to fold up and it's all one piece. Now you can die cut this from plain cardstock and use it as is. You can also add additional papers on top. So let me show you my card here, and I'll open it up again, and you can see that I've got patterned paper here and here, but then I've got the solid cardstock in here. So I've die cut the main card base from cardstock from the Tulip cardstock set, and then decorated from there. So what I did is I took the die and I cut just portions of additional papers. So the pattern papers, being 8 by 8, were a little too small to use to do the entire base, but I can use the die just to cut a portion to glue on the front, and then I can do the same for the inside back. And I use a glue stick to glue this down, and then I will have a piece that is multicolored or multi-patterned. And so that's a great way to put your smaller pattern papers to use on a larger card die, like so. So then I've also got here on the front our young lady here at Chipboard Focal, like in our previous card. And I've got her positioned down, so she looks like this with her cup of coffee. And then I've also got the Think Big chipboard piece overlapping. There's a flower here which is tucked right underneath. Again, we've got all of our various shapes and sizes and elements that are overlapping. These two pieces here are tickets. These are cutouts from the paper pack. Here's one as an example. We've got the postage and then this ski ticket. And for this one, I thought it would be fun just to do a little bit of distressing. So I've simply crumpled it up really lightly. You don't have to wad it up, but just to kind of break some of those fibers there. And then I took my gold ink pad and just skimmed along some of those raised edges to give it a little bit of a distressed effect in there. And that's just been positioned down like so, overlapping her side here. And that's going to give us a really nice way to sort of read into the card. So she's positioned to look into the card. And I've got a large flower element here. So this is another one of the chipboard pieces. I also have lots of those floral rub-ons applied here. Here's one. I've got the leaves, again, some of those little bubbles, a beautiful butterfly, and then I've got another rub-on here on the blue cardstock, which is showing. Then at the top of the card front, I have this little tab, and we saw this on the cutout sheet. When you cut them out, there are two of them. One of them will look like this. So you'll trim this out with your scissors, and what I like to do then is just take my gold ink pad and give a little bit of inking around the outside edges, and then simply glue this up at the top of the card. And then I've got another cutout, the word believe on here, and a really tiny chipboard piece to accent this. So I'm able to create a lot of different movement and texture and dimension on this card, and I think The card style, the Trifold Surprise, just works so beautifully here. And it's a lot of fun to make and to receive as well. So this is our final card of the day today. A big thank you to our friends at Stamperia, as always, for their gorgeous collection of papers, chipboard, rub-ons. These accents all come together so easily and so beautifully, and they're just a lot of fun to work with. A big thank you to you for joining me today. We're really glad you're here. We're so happy that you're a part of our Paper Wishes family. Do feel free to leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, see this webisode on paperwishes.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, have a look in the description box below this video. You'll find a link that will take you to our Paper Wishes webisodes page and you can see everything I just mentioned. If you enjoyed our video today, we'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It helps people to find our channel. And don't forget to subscribe. We create 3 to 5 videos each week, so there's always something fun to inspire your creative spirit.